All right, GM Pinto Farm. I think this is edition number two of our Pinto University 101 series, where Friho and I will come with a bit of content, just a couple minutes or so on some particular topic, and open the floor for questions and discussion. And today, the plan was to talk a little bit about converts. Uh, Friho, did you have anything you wanted to start with? Otherwise, I'm happy to open with something.
Nothing on my end. Yeah, let's get it going.
Cool. Well, maybe to zoom a layer or two out before talking about converts, I think one property of a system like Pinto that is really important can best be demonstrated by example. I don't remember if this is something I learned in the Beanstalk University classes back in the day, but back when I was getting into crypto and better trying to understand how AMMs worked and how convert worked in particular, one example that really landed for me was one property of systems like Beanstalk and Pinto that is really important is one where, for example, uh, consider a couple different states that the Pinto system could be in at, let's call it, a billion supply. One where all billion Pinto are on the market trading against non-Pinto value, in which case the liquidity rate or L2SR would be, more or less 100%, i.e., all of the Pinto, all of the outstanding Pinto are liquid. Uh, and of course, at 100% L2SR, uh, I mean, it would be an understatement to say that would be a very healthy state. Whereas, consider an alternate scenario where there is, call it a dollar of liquidity trading against one Pinto, and all remaining of the billion Pinto are, deposited single-sided in the silo. In both of those states, the price of Pinto can be at a dollar. Uh, Now, of course, one of the things that Pinto measures in order to determine its health is the liquidity level, or L2SR. And in that state, the L2SR would be near zero. Uh, but it is pretty interesting that, it can still be in a state where it's at a dollar. And of course, what's unhealthy about the state is that as soon as any of the outstanding, a billion minus one Pinto are dumped on the market, the price would collapse. But the this is sort of to get into converts. One of the things that the system tries to do is, well, all while stockholders are exposed to the stock and seed incentives that incentivize depositors in the system to maintain exposure to their Pinto position, either in the form of uh, the ERC20 Pinto token itself, or allows people to more or less, one analogy is that you're effectively, buying Pinto by converting up from LP tokens to Pinto, or vice versa, effectively selling Pinto when converting down from Pinto to LP tokens. The thing that made it click for me back in the day, from a mental model perspective, is that it's more or less, well, one, just to clarify, at no point in that process are any Pinto removed from the supply. Effectively, what is happening is that the Pinto is being moved in and out of the pool, and as mentioned earlier, the price can be a dollar, or the price can be any particular amount at any given liquidity level. So, one of the things that we've seen with Pinto since launch, particularly since, call it December or January, when there's been sort of a down cycle, is a lot of the LP tokens converting up into Pinto, such that the L2SR has decreased from, something like 80% to now wherever it sits around 12 or 14%. And outside of course, any sowing activity, the Pinto supply hasn't changed as a result of that activity. But it is converts at the end of the day that has allowed Pinto to, drop 90% in liquidity terms, from the peak of something like 28 million to three-ish, I think. Yeah, down more or less like 80-90%, and have the price only be down 25%, where it's currently at around 74 or 75 cents. So prior to converts in Beanstalk land, Beanstalk was probably not going to make it. In particular, in the couple of months leading up to the launch of converts, which was about 4 months after the deployment of Beanstalk, it was taking on an excessive amount of debt due to other exogenous reasons related to the problematic soil issuance at the time. But there was also no convert mechanism, which means that when at the time when you committed to depositing either Pinto or LP tokens, you were stuck with it indefinitely. And this new, I mean, I guess it's not new anymore, but this convert system allows people to not just optimize their exposure to different assets in the silo. And I haven't talked much about or at all about Gen convert, the ability to convert from an LP token to another, i.e., for example, exchanging exposure for something like ETH to something like CB Bitcoin. But yeah, so maybe we can get into that at some point as well. But that is a sort of a high level of how I think about the convert system and its value add to the system. Riho, did you have anything you wanted to chime in with?
Yeah. Did you want to go over how it like works under the hood? I feel like when we say we convert Pinto to LP or Pinto or LP to Pinto, it is a little muddy on what that actually means from a AMM perspective.
Definitely.
You want to take a stab at it, or I'm happy to take a stab at it as well.
I mean, I say go for it. I mean, the only thing I would have to add, implementation wise, that is that a convert up from LP tokens to Pinto mechanically looks like a removal of liquidity from the well or from the pool one-sided as Pinto. And then, the opposite is true. When you're converting down from Pinto to LP tokens, you're effectively adding liquidity one-sided on the Pinto side. And that's how you end up in this state where, at a high level, you're more or less moving the Pinto around in and out of the market. But if you have particular color to add, that would be great.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I would just add, is that the L2SR, just to give a little bit of nuance on the convert mechanism, in practice, the L2SR measures the non-Pinto liquidity that's in the pools divided by the total supply. And, the converts themselves, while they change the price, don't actually change the L2SR. Uh, what it does, though, is that, if people don't convert, let's say the price is above its value target and people do not convert their Pinto into LP, what really happens is that, another farmer or another actor outside of Pinto system could arbitrage that value away. So what the converts really do is, ensures that the liquidity that would have been extracted from the protocol stays in the protocol rather than increase or decreasing the actual value in the protocol.
Great clarification. Thank you.
Maybe one thing to also note is, the highlight is that convert is both the user and the protocol. You know, Currently you're not when the Pinto price is above its value target, you know, there without the use of converts, you aren't able to arbitrage that deviation from value target, right? And likewise, when it's below its value, when the price is below its value target, you're also unable to arbitrage, uh, because of the stickiness of the silo, you aren't able to withdraw, sell your Pinto into LP and then redeposit without losing stock. So the convert mechanism is this kind of way to permit actions related to arbitrage while still allowing you to retain your stock. And this is where, the LP to LP converts come in. From the protocol's perspective, $1 of non-Pinto liquidity is the same no matter what asset is underlying that dollar. So, from that perspective, the protocol is happily uh, willing to allow you to convert from one uh, LP token to another LP token. You could make an argument that due to the H system, where the system tries to uh, optimize some distribution of the liquidity, that the system could impose some penalty when you're converting away or from, but ultimately the choice to not do that was because if that feels like a secondary peg maintenance system and not directly impactful to the efficacy of the primary uh, system. In this case, being the crop ratio, the field, and other things.
Yeah, a couple other thoughts we haven't mentioned so explicitly yet are around the reasons you would convert in the first place. Uh, which to which there's basically two answers. One, a potential seed gain, and two, a potential stock gain. Uh, and of course, like a potential seed loss would have to be accounted for in your calculus as to whether to convert or not. At the moment, given that the crop ratio, which is uh, the Pinto to it's the ratio of the seed rewards between deposited Pinto and the deposited LP token with the most gauge points per Pinto denominated value, which looks like to be Pinto USDC at the moment. But given that that ratio is so high, essentially converting from any LP token to Pinto at the moment would result in a seed gain. Uh, and secondarily, with respect to stock, typically the stock gain isn't realized at the time of the convert, but later if and when Pinto returns to peg and you perform some future convert. But this is also related to a feature that we called aptly the convert bonus, that I think the audit for which ends pretty soon. But effectively, the goal is to create a system where there's a more explicit stock incentive to converting up, in particular. I don't recall exactly what the parameters are for when that bonus increases and such. Maybe Freeho, that's something you can elaborate on. And also as far as timing, as far as like when farmers can expect that.
Yeah, for sure. Couldn't really. Sorry, I couldn't. What was the first part of the question?
I was talking about the upcoming convert bonus system, the convert up bonus in terms of stock, and I was wondering if you could share a bit more about what that system will look like exactly, at a high level, and also when you're expecting it to land.
Great. Yes. So the audit actually concluded today. I had a call this morning with the auditors, and we've discussed the findings they had. And generally speaking, there were no substantial bugs from our upgrades prior from Beanstalk to now. The only real bug was a view function that it gave improper values when queried. So that's great to hear. For the convert bonus itself, you know, how it works is that the bonus is calculated based on the stock, the lowest amount of grown stock per deposited token that was grown from the time the system last crossed its value target. So I guess just to put an example, the system has been below its value target for about a month and maybe a half now. And since then, the silo has been growing stock amongst all its whitelisted tokens. Currently, the convert bonus looks at how much stock out of all the tokens, the lowest amount of those tokens, the grown stock, uses that as the bonus of how much someone could be willing to get. So that is, how you say the upper cap. So just to put some numbers, maybe let's say there's been 1,000 grown stock that grew from, I believe right now Pinto BTC is the lowest seed. So let's say Pinto BTC has grown 1,000 grown stock. Uh, every season, the system is willing to issue up to 1,000 grown stock a bonus to people who convert uh, from LP to Pinto. Now, in addition to the bonus, you know, it was implemented in a similar fashion to how this snowball in the field was implemented, where we're playing around or just tweaking the scarcity of the asset. You know, for the snowball, it was decreasing the scarce or increasing the scarcity of soil in order to control the demand of soil. In this case, we are we're adjusting both the amount of grown stock uh, one user can get on a convert, as well as the amount of PDV you need to convert to get that bonus, to get that maximum bonus, uh, such that as more people convert, the amount that can be converted increases over time, and the amount of bonus you get decreases over time. Uh, this creates, you know, uh, some game where whenever you see, or I guess increases the incentive for you to convert whenever you deem the convert bonus acceptable to you, because you know that after if someone else converts before you, uh, the bonus may decrease, and thus you won't get as much stock had you converted now. So it's a very interesting dynamic to see. I mean, personally, this will probably be much more powerful with a system like Tractor on top of this. When we released the soil snowball, uh, there wasn't much snowballing occurring due to the friction needed to sow. And now we've seen a huge increase in soil sown because of Tractor. So I'd imagine uh, a similar effect occurring without Tractor, although it's not as strong because the game's a little different with the convert in the field. With the field, there's only a finite amount of soil to sow, whereas with convert, even with the stock bonus, changing over time, there's still a large benefit in converting now just via the seeds. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it is all a speculation at the end of the day, but it'll be interesting to see how this bonus will affect people's incentive to convert. I mean, we've learned many times, or I guess throughout this, uh, throughout the PIs, that the incentive to hold LP over Pinto is very high, just due to the nature of the safety that holding LP has against Pinto from its deviations. So, this PR amongst others, or sorry, PIs amongst others, is an attempt to kind of keep that how I say, like, incentive in check, such that the system's better, or I guess giving more tools to control this incentive is important in improving the efficacy of value target maintenance.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how that capped amount of PDV that can be converted for the bonus each season plays out with Tractor. What's the current ETA on that?
Well, the next 3 days we will have a review session where the Pinto development community will fix the findings that the auditors found, and then they will review them and then submit a report from that. Then I guess at that point the system is ready to deploy, but you know we have not finalized the parameterization of the convert bonus. We just built the formula, and at any time we're able to switch, some constants and whatnot within this formula. So, what personally I've seen with the soil snowball is that, personally speaking, with the data, we did relatively well on the parameterization, but I feel like had we done more analysis and had more dot, we could have done uh, slightly better. So would like to spend more time thinking on how to best prioritize this convert bonus such that people are willing to convert and we are able to see the effect we would like to see.
I also assume the UI for creating blueprints for this may take some time as well.
Yeah, I mean we can launch it relatively soon, but the Tractor UI to create a convert order would probably take a lot of time. Uh, both on the maybe not a lot of time, but take a decent amount of effort for sure. I mean, the convert order book hasn't been fully specced out on what the features will be wanted, and then how to kind of show this bonus on the UI is also the discussion to be had.
Convert in general would need some contract level work as well.
Like in terms of like tractor helper functions.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. But I assume we're closer to a world where at least you could convert manually and you would see like the extra stock increase reflected in the existing convert UI. Is that a fair assumption? Like
Yeah, I
once the convert bonus PI goes live.
yes.
Nice. All right. Curious if anyone has any thoughts, questions, etc. related to converts.
I feel like there should be more incentive to convert when it's really close to peg. Like earlier when the system was running, and it was fairly close. It was like just hovering right below peg for quite some time, and the price was like 99.8 cents or something. So there was not really any bonus to be gotten from converting. But it was not enough like to fully bring it back to target. So I don't know have any solutions or ideas, but I feel like there should be a little bit more incentive for converting, like still when you're close to peg as well. But perhaps we can cross that bridge when we see the system hover closer to peg for a longer period of time.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I would almost make the opposite argument. I don't remember when the PI was shipped that increased the crop ratio, but to 150%. But personally, I remember it sitting around 98, 99 cents and converting frantically to get the higher seeds. Uh, Whereas if the system had not been so aggressive in getting people to convert up around those prices, perhaps all of the people that exited over the following 3 months could have exited at lower prices and left more value in the system. But given, I mean, I would just like to fact check myself. Let's see when this PI was. Or if anyone knows, feel free to shout it out. 'Cause I could be making it up as far as that having happened in January or so.
I would make the argument that fewer people would have left had their price been, hovering slightly over peg rather than slightly under peg, due to the fact that there would have been prints and therefore reason to stick around. Um, I don't know. This idea of like, oh, we should make people exit at bad prices just seems so anti low volatility and like anti stable to me. Like, why would I want to put money in this system that as soon as it drops slightly under peg, we want it to like fall as low as possible so that people exit at worse prices? Like, what a sad idea. Like, why would I want to buy into that? So I can't say
I
I'm
think we're
on that.
complaining, I think Austin's point is that if people are leaving, they should leave a low price. But I think what you're saying is that the people that are close or in the price being close to this value target and not doing anything is what causes people to leave. I think
Yeah.
there can be two systems here. I mean, it's a tricky battle for sure. I feel like you definitely cannot say like, had the price been closer to this value target, the same amount of people would leave now, right? It's so hard to know. And you have a valid point. Had the price been above its value target, more people would probably stay. But I feel like the suggestion of keeping the convert bonus to go, I mean, switching or I guess adjusting the convert bonus such that people are more incentivized to convert up. Converting up doesn't necessarily uh, ensure the price stays above its value target. I think that is more a implementation of the convert down penalty, uh, which that has two different properties. I think, uh, like I feel like the system personally should be able to flourish around 99.95 cents and $1.05. But historically, what we've seen is that the system is hovering around 0.995, and then immediately after it crosses its value target, it's uh, aggressively converted down. So I feel like for me personally, the great exit or the majority of people leaving is more on the fact that any oscillation above its value target is quickly oscillated down rather than hovering around 0.995. I think if well, I think more people, personally speaking, would probably stay around like 995 if they knew that once the system crossed this value target, uh, it would hover there for some amount of time, right? So, two systems,
Yeah.
I guess just to compare two systems where one hovers around 995, but after it crosses, it gets, immediately converted down. There's one that also stays at 0.995, but uh, the system is designed such that it hovers around 1.001 for a little bit. That definitely has different properties. So I don't think the price hovering slightly below its value target is necessarily bad. I think it's more so uh, the expectation of what happens if it crosses up that what causes people to not value the stock as much, and thus are more willing to leave.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. But I think it would hover over the target more often if, if there was not such incentive to convert down immediately. And the last time that we were hovering right there, the crop ratio for pure Pinto was at 100%. So now with this 200% change, there will be a longer period of time where it still makes sense to hold pure Pinto before converting. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out upon the next target cross. But that in combination with
Actually,
the convert down penalty, I think are will be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I remembered what I was referring to earlier, which is that in January the crop ratio was still 100%, but converting from most LP tokens, i.e., the ones not at parity 1-to-1 with Pinto, could all be converted to Pinto for a seed gain. And yeah, I feel like what we're talking about here is like determining where on the scale to trade off the short term for the long term, or vice versa. And my experience in January was one of, it hovering around 98, 99 cents and frantically trying to convert in small clip in the only small clips available in order to maximize my seed amount, in order to maximize the amount of time in which I was growing more stock. And I was able to do it repeatedly because as soon as I converted some small clip, people would dump into it immediately. And that's sort of the dynamic I'm referring to of like giving people better prices to exit at. It's just like, yeah, it's unclear where exactly the optimal point on the spectrum is.
Were people dumping into it immediately, or were people just converting down, and then the volatility of the underlying assets that the LP tokens are paired against, like, the volatility there was such that like people were converting down as soon as it was over peg, and I think partly it was hovering slightly below peg because of those immediate down converts, and then the volatility of the assets would drop back down for a second. So, but I mean, if you were looking at the bots channels, then I assume that you can see if people were actually like exiting the system upon your converts.
Does it affect your beliefs whether one were true or the other? I'm curious about like what would be optimal or not.
Optimal in
I don't know.
terms of
I don't
the
know the answer as
down.
to what was happening, hour by hour. But are you saying that you feel differently about whether the dynamic I described of converting up and being able to do so repeatedly, I guess your point is like if the market were just decreasing, that's sort of like a natural thing. Whereas if people are selling, that's
Well,
different.
I think we might have been hovering slightly below peg just because so many people, for some reason, felt the urge to convert to LP, um, anytime it was slightly over target, and then so that it was kind of like setting a high watermark. Like as soon as it went up a little bit, people would convert right back down, and then that's why, like almost all the time, we would be at this 995 price level because of these down converts. That's what it seemed to be like to me when I was looking at the bots channels, but perhaps somebody has data indicating otherwise.
Good thing we have the everything chart. Shout out Floyd Rainweather. Uh, yeah, I'm just looking at this chart, and this is the price, and this is the L2SR. And for me, I guess what I think about when you're suggesting to increase the incentive when we're close to peg or close to the value target to convert is that, we've been hovering around independent of the convert down penalty, which I think will also change so many things. But, you know, uh, I see that we were oscillating around this value target, albeit, we're oscillating kind of below, or I guess the average is below. And then at some point in this graph, I guess like halfway through this graph, we start seeing dips, uh, where the price dips below and it immediately gets converted up. Let's say that's
What's the blue chart here in your screenshot?
The L2SR.
Got it.
Not sure that's the most
Sorry to
helpful,
interrupt.
And green is the
but
price.
yes, yes. For me personally, I see a small dip. Yeah, just like I can add it. Let me see if I can like screen share. You see my mouse. I see this I see this big jump. Oh my God. Here I see a price dipping below and then above, uh, look back to its price target and dips below and then dips above again, right? And I feel like, these converts, uh, helps a lot in the short term. But then when we had these big crashes here, had we spent more time holding our liquidity during this area, I feel like these prices down here will be much lower. So I guess for me, it's a trade-off on like, would we rather see pegs close, sorry, prices closer to the value target during times like this, or would we rather see higher lows at prices like these? You know, Personally speaking, I feel like I would rather have higher lows than, I guess, lower or prices closer to its value target during stable conditions here. But that's just my guess here. Like even here, there was an aggressive, convert back up to peg, to his value target, and then immediately also converted down here. Like I'm wondering how, we can create a system that uh, smoothens all of this, if that makes sense, right? Like I feel like it's a trade-off based on short-term stability for long-term sustainability. Uh, I guess just walking through the entire thing, I think after around like here or so, the converts have been much less aggressive, right? Uh, like for me, one of the things I kind of want to also want to think about is that when we create the incentives to convert, right, uh, it makes it such that the converts actually do manifest to something more valuable, as in like with the convert bonus, for instance, the intent is that the converts kind of snowball back to peg or back to the value target, right? All these converts here haven't really been that, how do I say, that powerful in terms of getting us back to value target. Uh, so that's how I feel like my thoughts are in relation to what the what the intents of convert should do, right? Like I feel like, just like on
Yeah,
this
I can try.
example where we
Sorry, go ahead.
converted back up, like, or when the system converted back up here, like I would rather see a a gradual convert. I'm just highlighting with my mouse. I'm not sure you can see my mouse itself, but I'd rather see a slow slope up to peg here rather than a very sharp incline and an immediate sell off based off of that, personally speaking.
Well, one thing missing from this chart is it's not clear like where the L2SR is affected from converts versus actual buys or sells. I wonder if we could add that data in somehow.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is my point back before, where converts don't directly affect the L2SR, but more so affect people's ability to buy or sell and make an arbitrage with the current price. Uh, the system converted a lot at this point here, but you can see generally speaking, the L2SR did not change substantially because the liquidity, the non-Pinto liquidity stayed the same. It's only after uh, they converted or people started selling out that the liquidity to supply ratio decreased.
So you're saying when it shot right back up there, that was because of a buy, not because of a convert?
I guess there were some buys here. This little jump here, I assume is a buy. The non-Pinto liquidity, either there was a rally from the crypto market, or someone bought with non-Pinto dollars. So this jump would be explained by that. But yeah, I mean there was a huge, what we really like to see is the amount of LP tokens the system had, uh, across all LPs. I think that would give us way more insight on how much, quote unquote, convert power that was used in this, in this going back to the value target, right? But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, this is why I feel like sharp increases don't manifest into the outcome we want. Like I feel like if we had the liquidity here, we probably have at least 1 or 2% more liquidity in here in the lot and where we are right now. Because like I think about a lot that even though the system repegged here, sorry, went back to his value target here. In practice, I don't think anybody really remembers this small blips. I think partly because of the convert down penalty, or sorry, the lack of the convert down penalty, where any attempts to go over were just smashed down. But I also think that had these not occurred, I don't think the sentiment would largely change. People aren't using these points as data points, personally speaking.
Wasn't early March around the launch of S Pinto?
Yeah, I believe so.
So
I
I
guess
think
here,
probably people were getting excited and thinking like, oh shoot, maybe we're going to print again. And then they saw as soon as we got back to peg that people were just going to down convert, with quite a large overhang of pure Pinto able to down convert, and then being like, shoot, if we're not going to print, then what's the point? And left the system. That would be my guess.
totally, but that's a critique of the convert down penalty or the lack of it, and not the critique of the convert bonus. I think we're trying to focus on a experiment of increasing the convert bonus during short-term price decreases. Uh, that's my guess on what we're talking about. Unless you want to talk about like the general incentives, which I feel like is a very big topic, right? That's why I wanted to isolate the two.
You're talking specifically short term like depegs as opposed to longer term time below target.
Well, I just remember, the first thing you brought up was you think that a increasing the incentive to convert up when the system is very close to its price or to its value target is uh could be a good thing. So I was just using that as the backstop of our conversation, uh, and wanted to discuss why. So
I
in
see.
this whole conversation, I was just focused on the short term or the ramifications of a bonus that's focused towards uh very accurate pay maintenance uh for the short term. And I just wanted to kind of highlight in my thought process that like even though there was a huge uh convergence back to its value target from 70 cents to $1 in practice, I feel like no one really remembers that as a data point. I think people still kind of
And so there,
you go ahead.
and so therefore you think that how should the convert bonus be affected because of that?
Well, I feel like the convert bonus should be focused on uh long slopes where like the price slowly creeps up to its value target rather than a sharp uh increase towards its value target.
Got it, got it. So therefore, there should be less incentive to convert when we're close to peg, or like when there's like just like a short depegging. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
I
saying?
think yeah, I think I think you're right in the convert down penalty. I think uh the watermark, I think that's how you say it, does create this incentive that people aren't going to see the system oscillate around $1, and increases the incentive for them to leave. I definitely can see that point. Uh, I don't think people seeing the system like around 0.995 for a while is like I don't think it's ideal, right? Maybe or we can discuss about that too. But I think at this point here, most people are just hanging out, more or less. It's only uh, it's only when I feel like they saw the inability to go above its value target for sustainable periods of time is what I felt like people started to exit. like if I knew if we were below its value target for 6 months and the next 3 months was above its value target, but for a small period of time, you know, or I guess just the possibility that could happen, I feel like it's a very different dynamic than what we had prior to the convert down penalty.
I can try to maybe, I mean, this is somewhat related, but if I can try to summarize my earlier assertion, it's like, at this time, in January on the screen where it was hovering around $1, given that the crop ratio was at 100%, all LP tokens but one had quite a significant incentive in seed terms to convert up, even when it was only 99 cents or something like that, which in my view is a pretty happy state to be in and would better demonstrate to people the efficacy of the system. But given that it, incentivized people to convert up so aggressively at the time, we have less of that ability today. And brought up in an earlier town hall, like maybe this could have been something like having the crop ratio not be the bean to max LP ratio in gauge points per PDV terms, but instead maybe the min or some average. I mean, at this point, not trying to discourage the increased crop ratio. It's sort of like, which is just a natural reaction to the state we're currently in. But I wonder what state the system would be in if we had started with something like a crop ratio that sets the you know Pinto to average LP token in terms of gauge points per BDV. Now, does that mean like we would be at a 20% L2SR right now instead of 12? Like, probably not. That's probably more marginal difference than that. But I'm ultimately speculating.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel like it does have a substantial effect. I mean, it's kind of, yeah, definitely hard to know. I would love to have more data points here. Maybe maybe Floyd, how hard would it be to get the total amount of LP tokens across all LP whitelisted silo tokens? Having that as a graph, I feel like would help us understand, what was the price of this stability here and, for convert power. I guess how much LP tokens were used in this period and, see the trade-off space there.
Because you're saying
Yeah, I
if you
think what we
saw,
could.
sorry, I was just going to ask. So, like you're saying, if you saw a drop off in the number of deposited LP tokens, that would tell you it was being converted up, basically, is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, we have to make the assumption. We also have to juxtapose it with the amount of outflows. I mean, it's really hard to know. I guess convert volume would be the most accurate amount metric we want to see, like how many Pintos or sorry, how much LP were converted during this time of let's say 3 months.
Yeah, I think what we could do, I mean, something's definitely coming for this. It's not clear what is exactly the best way to present it. But yeah, I mean, the number of LP tokens probably isn't the best metric just because it's not really like normalized across the different types of LP tokens. Like the actual quantity is not very representative of their value. But there could be something like an aggregate, like of the BDV of all the LP tokens, or just kind of as you mentioned, like a convert volume. Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about a little bit as well, and it's not totally clear like what's the best way to represent it, but it would definitely be really helpful because I don't know if you explicitly mentioned this earlier, but with the L2SR, like even when on the L2SR chart you see it going up or down, that's like totally disjointed from converts because converts doesn't actually affect the L2SR. So there definitely needs to be some sort of representation of this available.
The thing
Yeah.
that's coming to my mind is it would be best to have like convert volume, withdrawal volume, deposit volume, and then maybe even like buy and sell volume as independent things that then you could sort of pick and choose to add. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like the stuff I would want on here is I would also want to see to do like a full analysis. I would also want the pod rate, but that's less relevant for the convert data. But when it comes to trying to decipher like what movement is actually happening, where's the capital going in any particular moment, I would probably want to be able to add to here like specific information on withdrawals, conversions, deposits, buys, and sells, and maybe even sows as well. Like, and then it's like that would show you where the funds are actually going.
Yeah, that would be cool. Do we have that data, Pinto Pirate?
I think I know we have the convert data. We have it on like a daily and a weekly basis. And I think we probably have, I believe we have the same for buying and selling. I mean, for sewing, I think there's just like already like a Pinto sewn chart that could be used. So yeah, for deposits, I'm not sure about that one.
All right, folks, does anyone have anything they want to close us with in the last few minutes?
I got a couple things if there's time.
Hit us.
First, I'm sorry I was late. Had a very important call that just went over and over and over, and I couldn't get off of it. I was actually very excited to come to this town hall in particular, because I think what's happened with Tractor is quite profound, and I just wanted to talk about it briefly, which is to say that, you know, I think the existential fear that rightfully so people were feeling and asking about over the past couple months, like the temp is going up, what is going to get the temp to stop going up? This feels like the system isn't healthy. There's no demand for soil. The creditworthiness of the system is the main thing keeping it intact. Like, what's going on? And then when we lowered the amount of soil available drastically, the fact that that didn't create demand, like artificial scarcity didn't create demand. Oh, it said stream ended, but I realized I'm still here. I think it was just the screen share. Apologies. But even once we created artificial scarcity and supply, that didn't really generate any sort of consistent demand, and the temp kept going up. That was concerning. And the discussion was, well, we'll see how lowering the friction for people to participate in smaller season by season soil availability through Tractor, what that would do. And from where I sit, it's been amazing to watch, honestly. Really amazing to watch. And it feels like we're still not at a point where like the snowball has really taken off. You know, it's an interesting thing. Like now with Tractor, people can sort of get in line in advance before they even sow. They can sort of get in like a queue to get in the pod line, if you will. And just to see that build up a little bit, that to me is the beginning of a snowball. So now it's like, now we have to have some interesting conversations about parameters to tweak and the cultivation factor and how much soil issuance should change season to season. Where now the game theory is like, we sort of want to trade off how quickly the system would return to peg if it sold out every season, with only increasing the soil fast enough such that it doesn't eliminate the snowball. So I feel like there's a lot more to be said on this topic, but I just wanted to share my thought, which is that this is super, super exciting and encouraging to see how lowering the friction in the system can really make quite a significant impact on the entire health of the system. And to me, it's honestly a very positive suggestion that a lot of the incentive structures that we currently have in place are not really manifesting in the way that they could because of friction associated with users acting the way that they want, if you will. So it's like, in some sense, the data is so encouraging because it almost makes me feel like until we have a Tractor on any particular part of the mechanism, there is now this like opportunity to, without even making further improvements in the incentive design, to still radically improve the overall efficiency of the system. So I was I mean, we've been trying to get Tractor out in the wild for years now. I was so excited just to see it, but now that we're seeing it, personally, I'm even more excited. and want to figure out how we can get more attention to tractor stuff or things like conversions, which I think will also go a really long way to creating a better system for peg maintenance without needing to do things like make the crop ratio still artificially high, for example. So just my 2 cents. I'm sorry I came in so late here. I feel like I could go a little longer here, but I know we're at the end. But hopefully sometime soon, as the data continues to come in, I'll have an opportunity to come share in longer form some analysis.
Do we have a hard cutoff here at the top of the hour? Or do we have a chance to like ask a couple questions?
I can go just a few minutes, but I'm unfortunately going to have to hop. But I can go a little longer. Let's see how long I can stay.
So what? I'm not so sure if that the tractor will be so effective on converts. Like, do you think that people will start converting up just because tractor allows them to convert up? Like with the soil snowball, you really couldn't sow, 100K, but now we have something like 173,000 of Pinto in the queue waiting to be sown. Whereas with convert, you can pretty much just convert instantly, and there's not really any limitation on that. Why do you think that tractor will make convert so much more effective?
Well, I think as it currently stands, it might even have a sort of a perverse effect because the convert order book would effectively turn the Pinto AMMs into an order book or closer to an order book, something like a hybrid between a central limit order book and an AMM model. And from that perspective, that almost makes it easier to attack Pinto from a price discovery perspective. Like the fact that the AMM is continuous and smooth in nature makes like moving the price to any particular point, like it's unclear how much conversion is going to come in, how much demand is going to come in at any given price point. So it's unclear how much marginal supply would need to be sold in order to move the price a certain amount, if that makes sense. Because like the conversions and the raw bids are not available to the public. Whereas once we have conversions, that information will now be available. And in the current setup, I think that might even lead to more volatility, if you will. So I think your point is totally correct. However, we've talked a bit about a bonus system for conversions, a stock bonus system for conversions, which would try to create a conversion snowball similar to the field snowball mechanism. And that is, I guess, where I was more excited, like to get a queue for converts as well, if that makes sense.
Got it. So you think like as people predict that, or the convert order book would be set up as such so that like when the convert bonus hits a certain amount, you would say, hey, I want to convert, once the bonus hits a certain amount. And then because the bonus would be somehow limited, then that would also like cause other orders to start triggering upon like some orders triggering, or like I'm not.
Well, it's like the bonus. If we rate limit the bonus, the thing is around the artificial scarcity, right? So the point that you made was that right now you can convert infinitely to peg effectively, which will still be the case in the future. But the idea of adding a bonus now, and we would have tractor converts where it's like, I only want to convert when the bonus reaches a certain amount, a la I only want to sow with a minimum temperature. So they do sort of map. In that way, you could imagine a queue lining up for conversions, but at the same time, because the amount of stock bonus is sort of rate limited, in practice, the amount of conversions, like the dynamic that I was just explaining, where you have this order book now that is more easy to manipulate, I think is much harder to manipulate in the same way because you don't have an expectation on exactly how much time it will take for those conversions to take place because they're a function of the bonus. So it's no longer like a true order book that's instantaneous. It's more like some rough indication over time on demand at an approximate level. which has the ability to sort of indicate that there is demand, so that people can have confidence in the system, and there can actually be like a queue start to build up for conversions as well, and the system can slowly repeg itself due to people sharing their intention to convert under certain conditions in the future. But their sharing their intention doesn't like harm the system through the information that's being disclosed, which is sort of the key distinction, if you will.
But wasn't there going to be some kind of like convert bonus capacity in that, like, once
Yes,
someone
exactly.
starts getting the bonus, then it runs out? So you're saying that like this queue would be waiting for the bonus to grow up again so that people would convert? Or
Well,
that,
this has to do with how we specifically determine like the rate limiting for the bonus. Um, at least the mental model I've been using for this discussion is something like the amount of like there's some sort of rate limiting that's happening on the bonus. The bonus has some magnitude, like what is the stock per PDV, and then separately how much PDV can be converted and be eligible for the bonus. If that makes sense, I'm suggesting that we would have. I guess I'm not even suggesting, but the mental model I've been using would be something like the rate limit of PDV goes up over time based on sort of like a similar thing to the way the amount of soil changes. But the bonus changes similar to how the temperature changes, where it's like I think it should collapse to zero much more rapidly after a repeg than like the temp. The temp collapsing, I think, is a totally different dynamic because the pod line persists. But I think we would want something that the magnitude of the bonus in terms of per PDV would increase over time the longer that the price is below the value target or something. And then it would sort of like stay at a similar level. It's unclear how we would have to have it change to create the optimal game theory for people to keep converting. I haven't gotten that far, but I was thinking something like the magnitude is set as a function of previous demands for conversions, and the amount of the bonus per PE is something that is a function of probably the debt level and the liquidity level, in addition to the time spent below the peg.
and then if people start doing these converts, do you imagine that like the um the amount of the bonus, like not the quantity available, but like how good the bonus is, would be like start to be limited as soon as people start taking it, in the same way that the temperature kind of starts dropping as soon as people start sowing? So like a
Just
cultivation effect, like a
I just pasted what we have currently for the career bonus, maybe to give some reference. Yeah, I mean, currently we have it such that as more converts occur, uh, every season the bonus goes down and the capacity goes up.
cool. So it's a similar dynamic to the temp and the cultivation factor.
Yeah, I mean the convert bonus is kind of like the field. You're just trying to find the optimal stock per PDV people are willing to take to convert, and then the capacity in which you do so is the soil component. You want to take it like an analogy basis. So
Yeah, got it.
capacity
Nice.
really is the cultivation factor part. Like you don't have both, then you run into a problem where people are what we saw before without the soil snowball, where people generally speaking were waiting for the price to creep up and up and up, and since nobody was taking that temperature, everyone was okay to just sit around.
Got it. Awesome. Cool stuff.
I mean, the thing that's coming to my mind here, which is maybe worth highlighting, is that whereas the protocol, like existentially, needs to minimize the amount of pods that it issues, such that it has a strong preference to issue less debt at the cost of volatility. The stock system works sort of fundamentally differently in the sense that there's a pool of stock, and the protocol doesn't get to. It's not in a worse spot if it has to give a bigger bonus for any particular conversion. So whereas, like with the temp changes super slowly, my expectation would be that the stock bonus changes more quickly, and I can sort of see a world where the protocol actually has specific standards for volatility and it's like the bonus is a function of, is it too volatile or not right now relative to our target? And then it's like, well, how do we create a sustainable level of volatility? That's an open question. But I can see a world where this type of system allows the system to really fine tune user behavior, because in the silo, it's not restricted to the same issue as like it needs to issue as few pods as humanly possible, or not even humanly possible, smart contractly possible. Versus with stock, it's not the same dynamic. Now we have to consider the fact that if you give away too big bonuses, such that conversions sort of negate the effect of the stock system as it was originally designed, and also potentially leading to like centralization of stock and then centralization of control. These are things that we want to be mindful of, not to give out too big of a bonus too quickly. But I think it's a very interesting and super exciting design space, which I hadn't really gone so deep into until I sort of saw firsthand the efficacy of Tractor. Like, to see how Tractor really made such a difference is the thing that, to me, finally, it's like, okay, with Tractor, we actually do have a system that can be played at the level of complexity that it exists, if you will. Whereas, like, with the field snowball before we had Tractor, it felt to me like the system got too complicated, and at least too complicated from the perspective of like your average user couldn't really participate in the way that the mechanism was designed. But now that we have Tractor, I think we can actually go a lot deeper into fine tuning some of this stuff. And something like a convert bonus system that is really well done, I think has the potential to convert, like repeg the system really quickly when it wants to. Then it becomes more of like an existential question of like, well, when does it want to incentivize the converts? Once it wants to incentivize the converts, it probably should be able to. But really, really exciting, for me personally, an exciting time to be working on Pinto. Because for the first time, it feels like a lot of these more far out ideas on how to really take this thing to the next level, maybe even like a couple levels. They've all felt impractical because of this complexity issue. But seeing Tractor at work, it's been like a total eye opener that we can take this thing a lot further, even faster than maybe it's just we can take this thing a lot further soon.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So this, the way that the convert up bonus is currently designed, does that update every season? Like, in such that the convert orders will also be like ideally executable just once per season?
Yeah, I mean, as currently spec, yeah. I mean, ideally, we have some like intra-season way to do it, but it was scoped down for complexity.
Cool. So I guess one concern is then if we know that like X amount of PDV is going to be converted either up or down, like at the top of the hour, does that mean we can just like front run it every single hour, basically?
I think we would want to have some sort of like continuous. The front running thing is very interesting, honestly. Privacy is so important in these types of environments, but we don't have that.
Wait, could you restate the front running for Pinto?
Well, it's like
Yeah,
if
so,
people
like-
understand that they're about to be created. Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off, Ford. Do you want to go?
No, I mean, I'm sure you got it, but yeah, the idea is like, oh, if I know that in the next hour, 10K is going to be converted, then like, let me just, I know that it's going to move the price up. So I could just like, before the Tractor order executes, I could buy or sell. And then after it executes, I could buy or sell the other way. And I've basically, just front run the conversion and profited off of it.
Yeah, you can protect this with, but we're not going to be able to do it perfectly without privacy, I don't think.
In the Tractor thing, when we pull out of an LP, we did build this like thing that made sure that the price is within like a certain like 0.5% of the like manipulation resistant price versus the instantaneous price. But if the system is like not particularly active, then people might be willing to take the risk to like try and buy and sell before that. But it could be in practice that, that existing protection that we've already engineered is good enough, because it is an open market. So it's not fully, guaranteed that you'll make a profit if you try to do this front running. So perhaps it's fine actually.
I am gonna have to hop. This is so fun and exciting. I haven't felt so positive about this thing that I have over the past week in a very long time. So I wanted to just share a little bit of that excitement.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's awesome seeing the temp drop.
Total. I hope we can all sleep a little better at night now. All right, my friends, I gotta hop. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hop too, guys. See you later.
Peace.